The champagne hadn't even stopped fizzing when her father leaned in and asked, "So what's your plan when the money runs out?" Then she laughed, loud, proud, like they'd practiced the punchline. He stood. No speech, just silence. The ring clinked against her wine glass. And that's when everything changed. What he did next left their world in ruins. And they never saw it coming. I never used to get nervous meeting someone's parents until I met hers. Walking from the valet toward that towering house felt less like a stroll and more like tiptoeing across a tightrope. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched open to the skyline, the city lights staring back at me like quiet judges. Their calm shimmer did nothing to ease the chaos in my chest. My suit fit just right. The tie was perfectly knotted. I'd even practiced my smile in the reflection of their glass front door, hoping it would land right. I tried to pour warmth into my voice. Lena slipped her hand into mine and leaned close. "You've got this," she whispered. Her face should have calmed me. But as I watched her father's sleek car glide away, I realized I was walking into her world. And I didn't even know what game we were playing. They ushered me into a private dining room, the kind usually reserved for high-powered negotiations and discreet deals. The long mahogany table glowed beneath soft pendant lights, polished glassware lined up like silent sentinels. A sharply dressed waiter filled champagne flutes that sparkled like they were making promises I already didn't trust. Across from me, her parents sat, sculpted from wealth and indifference. Howard Whitmore's custom suit looked less like fashion and more like battle gear. He studied me with eyes that didn't blink. Beside him, Vivian gave me a polite smile, the kind that stays far from the eyes. My hand twitched toward the ring box tucked under my jacket. It suddenly felt heavier than it had that morning. We made small talk. School. Work. The story of how I met their daughter. I answered each question like I was reading off a script. When I brought up my firm's latest project, I tried to sound accomplished, but not too accomplished. Howard gave a short nod. Just once. Then he asked about my family. Where they lived. What they did. I told him about my parents' small shop, my sister teaching kindergarten. I smiled with real feeling, thinking of them. But the more I spoke, the more I felt something shift, like his amusement was growing, like a wave silently building behind me. Dinner began. First course, scallops resting on a pale smear of cauliflower puree, arranged like fragile treasure. I tasted it, forced a smile, and kept chewing. The talk turned to plans. Kids. Houses. Traditions. I imagined the cozy home I'd always wanted to fix up for Lena. But instead of saying that, I nodded along and broke off another piece of bread. The waiter returned, topping off my glass. The champagne fizzed on my tongue too sweet, turning sour. Then Howard leaned back, clasped his hands, and smiled. "So, Graham," he said, his voice low and coated in mockery, "what's your plan when the money runs out? Or is that when you vanish?" The words didn't just land, they detonated. Every syllable rang out like a stone across the table. He didn't ask to know. He asked to cut. I felt my chest go tight. I turned to Lena. She was laughing. Not nervously. Not out of discomfort. This wasn't a tense giggle you'd regret later. This was real. Loud. Confident. And it folded itself around his words, pressing them into my throat. Her eyes lit up with joy, not the kind you share, the kind you use. I realized then I was the punchline. My ring finger tingled. The weight of the box under my jacket shifted, somehow heavier now. I glanced down at the ring she wore, and something cracked inside me. Time slowed. I watched the metal catch the light. I felt the betrayal bloom cold in my chest. My mind scrambled, revisiting every moment we'd shared. That rooftop proposal with fairy lights. The way she leaned her face into mine while the city kissed the horizon. The vows we'd whispered under the stars. All of it collapsed. Not because it wasn't real, but because it never belonged to us. It belonged to them. And I would never be more than decoration. An accessory. A detail. I stood up. The sound of my chair scraping stopped everything. Waiters froze. Heads turned. I didn't have a speech. But the ring was off my hand before I could say a word. I placed it beside her wine glass. The surface of the crimson liquid trembled at the contact, like it too had been startled. The ring slid across the polished wood and came to a gentle stop, a small, shining symbol of something broken. I looked at her one last time. Her grin twitched. Confusion flickered. Maybe fear. Maybe pity. Maybe something else. But she didn't stop me. She didn't move. She just watched as I turned around. And I walked out. No yelling. No slamming doors. Just the soft, hollow sound of my footsteps against the marble. Each one a closing line to a story I tried so hard to believe. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing their laughter inside like a secret I no longer needed to keep. Outside, the night air hit me cool and sharp, like waking from a dream. I stood under a street lamp and let the city buzz around me, wrapping me in a silence so heavy it felt alive. The future stretched ahead, blank and jagged. But for the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid. I was relieved. The joke had ended. And now, finally, I could begin again on my own terms. I didn't go back to our condo that night. I walked into the Grand Meridian, gave them a fake name, and handed over a credit card with hands that still shook. My duffel bag felt like it held nothing but the weight of what I'd lost. It was midnight when I checked in. The clerk's smile was rehearsed, distant. He asked for an ID. I didn't answer. Just took the key. Room 511. I unlocked the door and turned on the light. The brightness pierced through my temples. I kicked off my shoes, dropped the bag, and collapsed onto the bed. The chandelier above me cast moving shadows on the ceiling, crystals dancing like ghosts. Sleep came in broken pieces. I dreamed of laughter. Her laughter. Echoing. Twisting. It kept growing louder. Her face warped with joy as I shrank beneath it. Her eyes sparkling with cruelty. I tried to speak, but my words drowned in a tide of champagne and shame. I woke up gasping, my shirt soaked in sweat. My hand reached for the phone. The screen was smudged, smeared with prints and pulsing with missed messages. Her name blinked at the top. So many people asking the same question, what happened? Her mother's text pleaded for forgiveness. Concern came in emojis and exclamations. But none of them had seen it. Not the insult. Not the betrayal. Not her laugh. All they knew was the space I'd left behind. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over her name. For a second, I thought about deleting everything. But I didn't. I flipped the phone to Do Not Disturb and sat in silence. Morning crawled in too early. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands running through my hair like they could rewind time. But last night didn't disappear. It didn't fade. It sat with me quiet, sharp, real. A half-full pot of coffee sat on the nightstand, lukewarm and bitter. I took a small sip, winced, and set it back down. My stomach rolled. I pulled the curtain aside and watched traffic crawl below, cars inching forward like people stuck in lives they didn't choose, just following signals. I felt like one of them, boxed in, waiting for some unseen hand to tell me when I could go. Eventually, I forced myself up. The shower was hot, almost scalding, and I let it strip away whatever pieces of last night still clung to me. I threw on whatever clean clothes I could find in my bag. Before leaving, I caught a glance at myself in the mirror. Bloodshot eyes, hollow cheeks. That face didn't just belong to someone heartbroken. It belonged to someone who'd lost his place in the world. The elevator ride down passed in silence, save for the distant groan of the city waking up. I climbed into a cab without looking back. Told the driver to take me to a small coffee shop I always liked, plain walls, no fancy drinks, just something that felt real. I grabbed a seat by the window and ordered a double espresso and an everything bagel. The barista placed the cup in front of me, her smile soft, like she'd seen too many mornings like mine. I nodded, then cradled the cup, letting the steam rise. The first sip was sharp, almost medicinal. But it helped. It reminded me I was still here. My phone lit up. Cal. He'd been my best friend since college, someone who'd seen all of me, at my peak and at my bottom, and never blinked. I let the call ring out. A minute later, it buzzed again. A message this time from Veronica Slade, the CEO I was consulting for. Still good for this afternoon? No mention of anything personal. Just business. Oddly comforting. Work was the only space that hadn't collapsed. It still ran by rules I understood. I glanced at the window again, sipped my coffee, and watched the world carry on. A mom steadied her toddler. A guy in a suit yelled into his phone. Nearby, a man played something slow and aching on a saxophone. The world didn't pause for my disaster. It didn't even notice. And I envied that anonymity. To just exist without expectation. To blend into the sidewalk, nameless. But I couldn't, not completely. Because unlike them, I knew something now. I understood the cost of giving people the power to break you. So I decided, right then and there, I wouldn't hand that power out anymore. Not even to her. I picked up my phone and scanned the voicemails. Cal's voice spilled through the speaker, urgent, worried. Graham, man, where are you? Been trying all night. Reed said you just left. Look, if I were you, I'd call her back. She's your fiancée, man. His voice was careful, like stepping through glass. I didn't interrupt, just listened. Then I typed a reply. Call me later. I responded to Veronica, confirmed our meeting, cleared out messages from college friends, even deleted a bank alert about being overdrawn. I trimmed my inbox until it stopped feeling like a weight. Then I pocketed the phone and stood. The world outside the cafe looked different now, bigger, somehow, full of space I hadn't noticed before. And for the first time in a while, I wasn't leaning on anyone to stand. That afternoon, I met Veronica in her office. She glanced up, her eyes searching my face as we shook hands. "Everything okay?" she asked. I gave her a short, honest, "Not really." Then I sat and walked her through our project timelines, revenue targets, launch phases. Everything is planned. She nodded slowly, taking notes. Didn't press further. That silence was something I appreciated. Work was clean. It didn't require me to play a part in someone else's show. It just asked for clarity, skill, consistency, things I hadn't lost. Afterward, I walked back to the cafe, grabbed another espresso, and texted Cal, Old Park Bench. 1 hour. His reply came back instantly. On my way. I sat outside, shoulders straight, breathing in the cool spring air. When Cal finally showed up, he dropped down next to me like someone bracing for impact. His eyes were full of questions. I passed him the coffee I'd bought for him. "I'm okay," I said. "Not good, but okay." He studied me, like a friend sizing up the damage before choosing his words. "You want to talk about it?" I didn't look up, just stared into the cup. The sun hit the edge of the rim and glinted. "I'm not going back," I told him. "Not to her. Not to that life." My voice cracked slightly. It felt like a funeral, Cal. Like I was grieving something I thought was love. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaled slow. "Then don't." I looked at him, and for the first time in days, I smiled. Small. Real. "I won't." Around us, the city moved on. Horns. Laughter. Children running past. It was all too loud, and somehow perfect. Because I realized that not all endings are meant to be mourned. Some are simply invitations. Invitations to start over. To tell a story that's actually mine. I finished my coffee, stood up, and felt ready. Maybe not strong, but ready. The next morning, sunlight crept through the blinds in soft golden lines, but I didn't feel any of it. A fresh cup of coffee sat untouched on the counter. Its steam vanished like hope. That's when the knock came, 3 gentle taps. Too familiar. My stomach sank. I stayed still for a beat, mug clenched in my hand. Then I set it down harder than I meant to and made my way toward the door. Each step felt like moving through molasses. Through ghosts. She was there. Hair mussed. Eyes red. A messy bouquet of daisies in her hand. Her favorite, still wrapped in wrinkled tissue. She hadn't even changed clothes. She came straight from wherever she'd been, without stopping to pull herself together. My chest went tight. Half of me wanted to shut the door without a word. The other half dreaded what I'd see in her face. I opened it anyway. The hallway light poured between us like a spotlight. She didn't meet my eyes. Instead, she looked past me, maybe chasing some memory I'd already buried. Her hand trembled around the flowers. Her lips moved. "Graham," she started. Her voice was thin, broken at the edges. Familiar, but off-key. "I'm so sorry." I leaned against the frame, arms folded, studying her like a stranger. That apology? I'd heard it before. Different words, same rhythm. The kind that gets rehearsed during the car ride over. The kind that comes after promises that never stuck. But this time, it hit differently. I wasn't the same man who used to lean in, hoping sorry could heal anything. "Sorry isn't going to undo what happened," I said, keeping my tone low, even as the words burned. Tears slid down her cheeks, but she lifted her chin like she was still trying to look strong. "Last night, I shouldn't have laughed," she said quietly. "You were right. My dad was cruel. You didn't deserve that." Her eyes dropped. I was scared of him. Scared of what he'd do if I defended you. I froze in place. That truth just hung there, heavy between us. I placed a hand over my chest, feeling the hard thud of my heart. "You froze?" I repeated. "You froze and stayed quiet." And that silence hit harder than anything he said. She nodded, her whole frame trembling. "I know. I wish I could take it back. The second you walked out, I begged my mom to find you, to tell you how much I love you." Her voice cracked on the word love. She swallowed it down. But she wouldn't help. I shifted, the doorframe digging into my spine. "Your mother," I said slowly. "She backed him, didn't she?" She bit her lower lip, hard. "She said he was too proud to admit he crossed a line, that I needed to wait for the right moment." that it would all blow over. Her fingers clenched tighter around the stems of the daisies. The petals bent under her grip. I waited, she whispered. I thought if I just gave it time, you'd come back. I thought I could fix it myself, without pushing him too far. Without pushing him? I finished for her, stunned by her logic. You mean, without risking his approval? Her face flushed with shame. I never thought he'd go that far. I thought I could handle him. I closed my eyes. Memories flooded back. Her laughter on lazy afternoons, the soft way she kissed my forehead, the doodles of our future she sketched onto napkins between pizza slices. I remembered believing in her. In us. Now, that world felt like it was breaking apart, splinter by splinter. Was that all I ever was? I asked, voice shaking. Something to manage? A variable to control so things stayed clean with your father? She shook her head hard. No. Never. You were always more than that. She stepped forward, just a little, as if afraid I might disappear. You're everything I wanted, Graham. Her voice dropped. I was scared. I was so scared of losing my family. I looked at her, weighing each word. Part of me wanted to believe her, to reach for her, to forget what I knew, and just hold on to what we had. But another part? That part remembered the dinner table. Remembered being laughed at. And it braced, ready for her to ask me to forget all of it, to get back in line, to play my role in her father's story. She inhaled deeply, then let the words go like a vow. Graham, I didn't come here to beg. I'm not negotiating anymore. I won't ask you to go through that again. If we do this, it'll be on my terms. I choose you. Her words floated there, soft and thin like morning mist. I wanted to reach out and tuck her hair behind her ear. I wanted this moment to be the one, the proof I'd waited for, that she was willing to stand up and fight for me. But all I could feel was the weight of everything that had come before. Every insult. Every silence. I appreciate that, I said, carefully. But I need time. I need to know that when I can't speak up for myself, you'll do it for me. She faltered, uncertainty flickering across her face. I will, she whispered. I nodded, then stepped back and slowly closed the door. It clicked shut between us. The daisies hung against the wood, limp. I stood there, hand resting on the knob, listening as her footsteps faded down the hallway. I didn't follow. Inside, the air felt colder than it had moments ago. I walked to the window, watched as she turned the corner and vanished. The flowers were gone, like maybe they'd never been there. My reflection blurred in the glass. A man caught between love and pride. Between the comfort of what used to be and the risk of what might be. I made my way back to the kitchen. My coffee was still sitting there, untouched for hours. I picked it up, swallowed the last cold, bitter mouthful. It stuck on my tongue, the taste of something long gone. Healing doesn't show up all at once. It doesn't ask for permission. It just happens, slowly, painfully, honestly. And somewhere beneath the ache, something had shifted. I could feel it. Like the momentum was no longer dragging me, I was starting to push back. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting. I was deciding. I could still let her back in, but only if it meant dignity wasn't a compromise. Or I could keep walking, past the ruins of what was supposed to be. The path wasn't clear, but for the first time, I could see both of them, and that felt like progress. I closed my eyes and listened to the soft hum of the city below. It moved forward, always, whether I followed or not. And somewhere in that sound, I heard something that almost felt like hope. 3 days passed. 2 since I boxed up the memories and sent them to storage. I sat in my office chair, sunlight cutting across the desk in golden stripes. Routine had returned. Emails. Meetings. Forecast charts scribbled across whiteboards. It felt safe. Solid. Until my phone buzzed and everything changed. It was from Veronica Slade, CEO of Vintage Technologies. The message was short. Can we talk? Urgent. My stomach clenched. I tapped to call. 2 rings, then her voice, usually bright and crisp, now sounded low. Controlled. Graham, she said, hesitating. I just got off the phone with a Mr. Langford from Whitmore and Company. I sat up straighter, heart already pounding. He said he's reviewing our consultant records, specifically your financials. Wants to verify your investment history and available liquidity. Her voice was calm, like she was reading off a weather report. But I knew better. This wasn't business. This was personal. What? I replied, layering shock over the truth I'd already suspected. My mind flashed back to Howard's smirk, the way he prodded and pushed at that dinner table, trying to expose weakness. Veronica sighed. He called me twice. Said it's just due diligence before you gain access to our upcoming funding round. But it felt strange. He asked for bank statements, proof of funds letters, even your personal credit report. I pressed my fingers into my temples. The blood pulsed hard against them. Howard Whitmore, her father, was turning corporate process into a weapon. The same man who laughed me off over dinner was now trying to erase me in boardrooms. Thanks for telling me, I said, standing and pacing slowly across the room. My suit jacket hung on the hook near the door, untouched. I ran a hand through my hair and tried to keep my voice steady. I agree, she said, her calm certainty hitting harder than any outburst. But I need you to walk me through this. Help me explain to my board why these checks aren't necessary, and why I trust you. I bit back the flood of frustration rising in my chest. I wanted to unload, to call out Howard's tactics, to expose the manipulation. But instead, I nodded quietly, mostly to myself, as if she could see the gesture through the phone. I'll send over a clear summary, I told her, outlining my qualifications and why these inquiries are off base. I'll attach supporting documents, bank records, proof of funds, a complete financial portfolio. Enough to cut off their leverage before it starts. Thank you, Graham, Veronica replied. I really appreciate this. I'll keep you copied on anything else that comes through. She ended the call, and I stared at the now black video tile on my screen, the silence humming like static. Anger rose slowly, anger at Howard for playing this game. But deeper than that, at Lena. She had sent me daisies and words of love while her father was quietly moving the chess pieces to destroy my credibility. This wasn't just a personal jab anymore. It was a professional hit job. I opened a new document and typed the title, Statement of Financial Integrity. I detailed my consulting rates, listed references from banking institutions, included copies of audits, and a notarized letter from my accountant. I combed through every figure with a fine-tooth comb. Every decimal mattered. Every detail had to be right. This wasn't just a rebuttal. It was my shield, my proof that I wasn't just a guest at their dinner table. I earned my seat at the boardroom. By the time dusk began to stretch shadows across my office, the file was done. I emailed it to Veronica with a note that read, I'm sorry you were pulled into this. I appreciate you standing by me. Let me know if there's anything else you need. Hitting send felt like launching a stone into Howard Whitmore's glass house. I leaned back, let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The tension rolled off my shoulders in quiet waves. That night, I didn't call anyone. I didn't want to talk. I was drained, not just from the work, but from the weight of what this fight had revealed. I poured a neat bourbon, stepped out onto the balcony, and watched the city flicker. Lights blinked on and off in uneven rhythms. Some buildings alive with motion, others silent. A breeze slipped between the towers, rustling the leaves of a potted plant I'd long forgotten to water. I took a slow sip, smoke and oak tracing the back of my throat, and stared into the quiet. The silence between us was louder than her father's mockery ever had been. The next morning, a heavy envelope waited at my door. I recognized her handwriting instantly, elegant, steady. I hesitated, already bracing. When I opened it, 5 photos fell into my hands. Tuscany. Us smiling over sunset vineyards. A bronze statue in a cobbled square. Our glasses raised high, full of candy-pink wine. Underneath, a sheet of stationery held her handwriting. A long letter, apologies, promises, dreams of what could still be salvaged if I just meet her halfway. She wrote of lakeside houses and Sunday mornings. Of kids, eventually. Of a life that still had room for us. I held the letter like it might burn me. I expected the familiar tug in my chest. That ache. But it didn't come. No spark of affection. No twist of longing. Just a cool, final clarity that I wasn't reading an invitation, I was reading a memory. Dressed up as a future. I picked up one of the photos. We were under a cypress tree, bathed in golden light. For a second, it warmed me. But only for a second. Then it slipped away like melted gelato down my wrist. I laid them out on the dining table. Beautiful fragments. Frozen. Untouched. Like pieces from a book I no longer read. And that's when it hit me. While Howard had launched a full-blown attack on my career, it was her silence that hurt more. She had known what he might do. She had known how far he could go. And yet, she did nothing until it was her comfort on the line. Her words, heartfelt or not, couldn't outweigh her absence when I needed her most. I gathered the photos and letter, slipped them into an envelope, and scribbled one line across the front. Returned. No longer applicable. I didn't mail it. I left it on the edge of my desk like a tombstone. A quiet marker of the chapter I'd buried. That afternoon, I called Veronica. Graham, she answered, voice warm but cautious. They got your files. They dropped the request. Called it a clerical mix-up. Good, I said, a mix of relief and vindication settling in my chest. Thank you for standing up for me. I'm glad I did, she said. Then, after a pause, but I'm even more glad you stood up for yourself. When the call ended, I sat there for a long while. The moment didn't feel like victory. It felt like a turning point. Not because I'd beaten Howard, but because I didn't shrink. Not for a powerful father. Not for love. Not even for peace. The threat in a suit had been neutralized. But the greater threat, the version of me that would have tolerated it all just to keep someone, he was gone too. I poured another bourbon and raised the glass to the horizon. To freedom. To boundaries. To stories I'd write myself, without permission, without fear. 3 mornings later, I got an email from Vivian Whitmore. Simple. Short. Can we talk? I have something for you. I stared at the name longer than I should have. Then typed out a reply suggesting a quiet cafe downtown. When I arrived at Ellington and Company on Maple Avenue, it wasn't the kind of place I'd once imagined for an engagement brunch. No chandeliers. No champagne carts. Just simple white linens and mismatched chairs. It felt real. She was already there, sitting alone under a painting of wildflowers. She looked different. Her hair wasn't done up. It fell naturally, curling a little around her shoulders. And the fine lines near her eyes weren't from age. They were from holding intrudes too long. She stood when I approached, offered a fragile smile and extended her hand. I took it. Her skin was cool. Her fingers delicate. Thank you for meeting me, she said, her voice softer than I remembered. We sat. A waiter came with menus, but she waved him off. I'm not here to eat. I nodded and waited. She took a breath, bracing herself. I'm sorry for what Howard said, she began. Then her eyes dropped. And for what I didn't do. Her words hit the table with no pretense. Raw. Quiet. Human. I hadn't expected an apology from her. Not really. I braced for more distance. More excuses. It wasn't just Howard, she said, fingers folding together in front of her. It was all of us. We looked at you and only saw our daughter's choice. Our legacy. A disruption to what we thought we knew. And we never stopped to consider how cruel that was. I watched her closely, trying to find the woman I once thought I'd call family. The one who complimented my cooking at that awkward first Thanksgiving. The one who once laughed at my dumb jokes. There was a time her eyes held warmth, back when she believed I might actually be the right one for her daughter. But buried beneath those memories was a vast emptiness, built from silence, from cold dismissals, and from one unforgettable night. I took a slow breath. Thank you, I said. It was the only thing I could say without falling apart. Vivian reached into her purse and carefully pulled out a small box, velvet-lined and delicate. She placed it between us like it might break the table. My chest tightened. I hesitated, afraid of what this could be, another gesture that looked kind but felt like control. But when I finally opened it, what I saw stopped me. A silver ring, set with a deep sapphire. The stone shimmered beneath the cafe's soft lighting, dark and powerful, like something sacred that had been waiting. This was mine, she said gently, brushing the corner of the box with her fingers. Before I married into the Whitmore family. Her voice lowered. Your grandmother gave it to me on my 21st birthday. I wore it for years. It reminded me who I was, before I became Howard Whitmore's wife. I lifted the ring carefully, studying its quiet elegance, the smooth curve of the band, the depth of the blue stone catching bits of light like it was holding secrets. It's beautiful, I murmured, surprised by how heavy it felt in my palm. Vivian smiled, but it faded before it reached her eyes. I've kept it hidden for 30 years, she said, afraid of what his family might say if they saw it. But after what happened at Castellan, I knew it needed new meaning. Someone else needed to wear it. Someone who still remembers who they are. She paused. I saw her shoulders sink, like she'd been carrying that weight alone for decades. Why me? I asked, caught off guard by the lump in my throat. Her gaze didn't flinch. Because, she said softly, you refused to bargain with your dignity. You walked away rather than accept their version of who you should be. She inhaled. I spent my life making peace with silence. Playing the role, dutiful daughter, quiet wife, unseen mother. But you? You drew a line. And you didn't apologize for it. Her words struck something deep. A knot of emotion swelled in my chest, gratitude, grief, something like pride. I don't know what to say. Just say you'll accept it, she said, leaning forward. Not as a gift from me, but as proof that your worth isn't up for debate. Let this remind you, you never owe anyone your dignity. I slid the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly, like it had always belonged there. The sapphire rested against my skin, cool and silent, but it spoke louder than any apology ever could. I looked up at Vivian, caught in the strength of her quiet courage. "Thank you," I said again, this time with all the weight of what I meant. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them with a clarity I hadn't seen in her before. "You're welcome. And Graham," she added, choosing her words with care, "you deserve someone who sees your value." Instinctively, immediately, without hesitation, I nodded, and the truth in her words settled into me. For too long, I've been chasing approval first from myself, then from a family built on status and control. But now, with this ring, I wasn't asking anymore. I was claiming it. We sat there for a while longer, our conversation soft and easy, about work, about art, about the pieces of her life I'd never known. For the first time, I didn't see her as Lena's mother or Howard's wife. I saw her as Vivian, a woman who'd taken a piece of herself back. The noise of the cafe faded around us, until all that remained was her sincerity, steady and unshaken. When I left, the ring caught the sunlight as I stepped outside. I paused, raised my hand, and let the sapphire glow. I thought of everything I'd lost, and everything I could still build. Its weight reminded me of a simple truth. Dignity is not something others give you. It's something you take back. As Vivian's silhouette faded behind the glass window, I drew in a long breath and moved forward. For the first time in months, I didn't feel bound to promises made at tables full of laughter. I felt anchored to something stronger myself. Later that evening, I stood in my condo, surrounded by cardboard boxes stacked like walls around me. Each one was labeled in my careful handwriting: books, kitchen, clothes, memories. The space felt enormous now, filled with echoes I didn't care to revisit, echoes of broken promises, of quiet arguments that never ended. What once felt like home now pressed in with everything we never said. I sealed a box shut with a strip of packing tape. The edge caught my fingertip, a small sting, one last reminder of what it costs to leave. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for the next one. Tuscany. Travel journals. The framed vineyard sunset she wanted in the hallway, not the bedroom. I stacked it all near the front door. Each box placed like a boundary. This was where the past stayed. Beyond it, that would be mine to shape. The air smelled of cardboard and dust, like a library left behind. Strangely, it felt clean. Like every taped-up memory shrank the weight on my shoulders just a little more. I paused in the hallway. The fridge hummed quietly. A faint rumble of cars passed below. Then my phone buzzed. Veronica. Her message was short. Board adjourned. Case closed. Smear resolved. I smiled, just a little. A small win. I slipped the phone into my pocket and turned back to the work. There was no time to hesitate now. I moved through the apartment with quiet purpose, pulling books, folding clothes, wrapping kitchen tools with bubble wrap. The bedroom was bare. Just a mattress and headboard where photos used to hang. I closed the curtains, stripped the bed, folded the silk quilt, the one she hated, and tucked it into the final box labeled linens. I stood in the doorway and looked one last time at what used to be ours. It ached. But the ache wasn't grief anymore, it was motion. It was change. The buzzer rang. I flinched. A part of me didn't want anyone to see this version of me, this dismantling. But I walked over and pressed the intercom. "It's me," Cal's voice crackled through. "Need a hand?" I buzzed him in. Minutes later, he stood in the foyer. His grin was crooked, part support, part sarcasm. "Hey," he said, "you labeling all your regrets under miscellaneous, or what?" I laughed. Actually laughed. It felt rusty, but good. We carried the boxes together, loading them into his car with military precision. Every trip down the stairs, a little more of my past stayed behind. With the last box tucked into the trunk, I closed the condo door. For the last time. And when I stepped outside, I inhaled the open air like it was something I hadn't tasted in years. It was lighter. Cleaner. Mine. Cal threw an arm around my shoulders. "You okay, man?" he asked softly. I brushed his hand away with a half-smile. "I will be." He nodded, understanding more than I ever needed to explain. I stepped back inside for one last sweep. The hardwood floors felt colder than usual, the walls echoing like they had something left to say. I moved through each room, my shoes whispering across spaces that used to hold music, laughter, and unspoken hope. I touched the wall where our wedding photos once hung. I stepped across the spot where we used to dance barefoot on quiet Saturday mornings. And under my breath, I whispered a quiet goodbye to the dream I used to hold, to the version of me who believed that ring was forever. At the front door, I paused, looked back one last time. The emptiness didn't scare me anymore. It didn't judge or accuse. It just existed. Open. Waiting. I'd thought that letting go of these boxes, these carefully labeled pieces of my past, would make me feel hollow. But the truth was, I felt lighter. Like each box I sealed had made room for something new. I locked the door and slid the key under the mat. A small, final act of release. Cal was already by the car, engine running, headlights off. I slid into the passenger seat beside him. The back was filled with pieces of a life I wasn't carrying anymore. As we pulled away, the condo disappeared behind the curve of the road, and something settled in my chest, a deep, calming hush. Not silence like grief. Silence like clarity. The stillness after an ending. The breath before something new. That night, I unpacked just one box in my temporary apartment, the small one Vivian had given me. I placed the silver sapphire ring gently on the nightstand. Its dark stone caught the lamplight and held it like a truth I couldn't ignore. I didn't need photos, or letters, or journals tonight. I needed that one thing, a symbol that dignity wasn't something I could ever pack away. I lay on a mattress that didn't yet feel like mine, listening to the low murmur of the city through the cracked window. The rest of the boxes were tucked in a storage unit somewhere, neatly stacked pieces of my old life. For the first time in a long time, I had room to breathe. And with that breath came sleep. Uninterrupted, honest sleep. No dreams. No regret. Because sometimes, the most important things we pack away aren't objects. They're truths. Quiet truths. Undeniable. Finally free. A week after Vivian's gift, I sat at my desk reviewing client proposals when a notification lit up my screen. A credit alert. I clicked, and there it was. Whitmore and Company. The name glared back at me in bold, uppercase letters. My stomach turned cold. Multiple hard inquiries. Credit history. Account balances. Even loan applications I hadn't made. I stood up, shoved the chair back. The sunlight pouring through the blinds felt harsh, like a spotlight. I needed confirmation. I called someone I trusted at First National, a compliance officer who owed me no favors, only the truth. My voice stayed calm. Can you tell me if Whitmore and Company requested my account records? There was a pause, then a quiet sigh. Yes, she said. We flagged it. Denied the request. Pending your approval. Relief and fury collided in my chest. They tried to slip in quietly, under the radar, but they got caught. I thanked her, ended the call, and stared at the wall, marveling at how the same system that suffocated me sometimes had just protected me. That evening, I met Lena at Blackwell's cafe. I slid my phone across the table. Look. She read the screen, her face draining of color. Graham, I didn't know, she said, her voice trembling. I folded my arms, leaned in. Didn't know, or didn't want to. She looked away. I asked Dad to help, she admitted. After the dinner, I told him I needed to fix things. He said he'd handle it professionally. I didn't ask for the details. It hit me like a gut punch. I remembered her laughter that night, how it had gutted me. Now I saw the second betrayal. Not just her silence then, but her complicity now. You brought him in again? I asked, my voice low, but heavy with disbelief. You let him use my name? She reached across the table, but I pulled back. I'm done being someone's collateral damage. Her hand hovered. Please, Graham. I'm trying. I shook my head slowly. Trying isn't enough. Not when you let him test me like I was a liability. Her lips trembled. I love you. She whispered it. But love without protection was just noise. I stood up. The chair scraped back, loud against the tile. I have work to do. That was all I said. And I left her there, alone under the flickering cafe lights. That night, I called my accountant and ordered a full audit, personal and business. I signed up for credit monitoring, fraud protection, changed passwords. Each step was like laying another brick in a wall I should have built long ago. As I clicked through the last setting, I realized how often I'd handed my trust to others, to love, to family, to status. Not anymore. Now, I was the gatekeeper. No one else. In the days that followed, I buried myself in work. Long hours, early mornings, late nights, proposals, forecasts, contract negotiations. I moved through them all with new focus. Not just competence. Command. My phone stayed silent. No more messages from Lena. No apologies from her family. At first, the silence felt unfamiliar. Empty. But soon, it felt like space. Space to rebuild. Then, one afternoon, I got an email from Whitmore and Company. A short, hollow message. Clerical error. Inconvenience regretted. No further inquiries will be made. I read it twice, then closed my laptop. I looked out the window at the high rises, sunlight dancing on glass, and I thought about every time I'd shrunk myself to fit someone else's frame. These inquiries, they had crossed a line, but they also reminded me what mine looked like. I took a slow sip of water and let the quiet wash over me. This time, I wasn't someone's project. I wasn't their weapon. I wasn't their mistake. I was Graham Keller, and I wasn't asking for respect anymore. I was living it. 2 months passed. In that time, I found a rhythm I hadn't known in years. Mornings started with coffee on the balcony. My laptop opened to fresh timelines, client feedback. I started journaling again, not to vent, but to dream. Not pages of worry, pages of possibility. I even signed up for a weekly pottery class. Something just for me. I didn't expect molding clay to be so calming, but there was something deeply comforting in shaping simple bowls with my own hands. No expectations. No audience. Just me and the material. These small, imperfect things were mine alone, free from judgment. Life had finally settled into a form I recognized. One I had chosen, not inherited or begged for. Then my phone buzzed, interrupting a Zoom call with Veronica. I quickly muted the meeting and stepped away to take the call in private. The screen showed a name I hadn't seen in weeks. My chest tensed, an old reflex, part dread, part instinct. 2 months ago, I would have answered with hope. Now, I picked up with quiet steadiness. Hello. No tears. No panic. Just a breath on the other end, slow, deliberate. Graham, she said. Her voice wasn't trembling this time. It was calm, confident. No apology hiding in the tone. No attempt to soften what was coming. I need to tell you something. I leaned back against the wall, eyes closed. Go ahead. She took a breath. I've been seeing someone. Jasper. He works at the foundation on the Children's Literacy Project. My dad sponsors it. There was a pause. Then she continued, voice gentle. He's kind. He sees me. And maybe I was looking for someone who didn't need to test me to make me feel worthy. She wasn't fishing for sympathy. She wasn't trying to get a reaction. Her words were steady, honest. I wanted you to hear it from me. I pictured her office, the cluttered filing cabinets, the stacks of paperwork, the narrow desk. I imagined Jasper, soft-spoken, probably careful with his words. Someone she had chosen this time, not someone chosen for her. Relief came first. Then something unexpected, a quiet pride. She had moved forward. She had found stability. I'm glad, I said, surprised at how easily the words came. I hope he values you. You deserve that. She paused. I expected another apology, but she didn't offer one. Instead, she said, I wanted to thank you. The words stopped me cold. Thank you for walking away, she said softly. You taught me something I didn't know I needed, that honoring yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. I let those words sink in. Being thanked for leaving, it felt strange. But right. You're welcome, I said gently. I'm glad it helped. She chuckled, low and sincere. It did. And I hope you're happy. I looked out the window. The sky was tinted in soft pinks, the last light of day settling over the city. I am. I had a home that was truly mine, work that fulfilled me, friends who showed up, and a ring from Vivian that reminded me, every day, of who I really was. I really am, I repeated. We sat in silence. But it wasn't awkward. It felt like two people finally understanding each other. She spoke again. I hope someday you find someone who doesn't need a ledger to see your worth. I smiled, slow, surprised. I already have. I didn't mean someone else. I meant me. I see it now. In myself. In my own hands. I've learned to value that first. Her breath caught, just slightly. I'm proud of you, Graham. Warmth moved through me. Not nostalgia, something deeper. Thank you, Isla. Goodbye. Goodbye. I echoed, quieter. I set the phone down, exhaled slowly, and let the stillness settle around me. 2 months ago, her words might have unraveled me. Now, they felt like a closing prayer. A quiet blessing on a chapter that had already ended. I reached for my journal and wrote just one line. Closure is its own kind of gift. Then I flipped the page and began sketching a new bowl. One meant to hold fresh water, not memory. That night, as dusk folded over the city, I stood on the balcony and watched the windows come alive with light. I opened my hand and held the silver sapphire ring in my palm. Vivian's ring. I traced the smooth curve of the band. The stone caught the last glow of the sun. It reminded me, the strongest bonds are the ones you forge with yourself. quiet, unshakable, real. In that simple truth, something bloomed inside me, not fire, not triumph, something softer. Peace. That final conversation hadn't been a goodbye. It was a beginning, a promise, that once you claim your self-worth, it becomes the compass for everything that comes next. Then came Tuesday. A plain white envelope waited on the welcome mat. No markings. No stamp screaming urgency. I brought it in, expecting junk mail or another form to sign. But when I turned it over, I recognized the handwriting. Vivian. I hadn't seen her since that morning at the cafe, the day she gave me the ring. Yet her presence had remained, a steady light in the background of my life. I carefully opened the flap and unfolded the contents, a small canvas wrapped in soft tissue. I peeled back the paper and found a painting. A weathered dock. A quiet lake. Sunset burning the sky in gold and lavender. Reeds dancing in a gentle wind. A single wooden rowboat, loosely tied. I held the painting against the wall across from my desk. Let the evening light catch the rippling water. The image wasn't grand. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't trying to impress. It was calm. It was enough. I ran my fingers lightly over the canvas. I imagined her hands guiding every stroke. Maybe painting from memory. Maybe painting from longing. She hadn't sent me art. She'd sent me a reminder. Of peace. Of future. Later that night, I sat in the living room. The painting glowed softly under the warm light of a nearby lamp. The glass on the coffee table caught reflections from the brushstrokes. I poured a small drink and sank into the armchair. And just stared. Funny how one image could say everything. Departure. Return. Courage. Trust. This wasn't an eruption. It was a quiet shift. Like water. Changing course. That night, I dreamed of standing at the edge of that dock. Bare feet on the wood. The lake mirror smooth. Sky wide and waiting. I wasn't afraid. In the morning, I brewed coffee. I stood before the painting again and thought I could hear the faint call of birds across the water. I pulled an empty frame from the closet and slid the canvas inside. Then I hung it above the kitchen table. That little painting above my kitchen table became part of my rhythm. Every meal shared there felt different, more intentional. I took calls with friends and clients beneath it, the quiet image a steady presence through the ebb and flow of conversation. When the work week overwhelmed me, emails stacking, negotiations grinding, I'd glance at it. The dock always there. Always still. Like it was waiting. On weekends, I'd take it down and bring it with me to pottery class. I'd sketch it on a slab of clay and shape it into shallow bowls, reminders I could hold in my hands. My fingers followed the memory of the reeds, the curve of the lake. And always, I remembered Vivian's words, "You don't owe anyone your dignity." Each coil of clay was a choice. Each curve, a boundary. Every vessel I shaped carried only what I allowed in. One afternoon, the sky in the painting darkened, lavender bleeding into violet. The colors shifted as if they were alive. That's when my sister called. Her voice was warm, her curiosity genuine. "What's new with you?" I told her everything. The painting, the pottery, the feeling of waking up unburdened for the first time in years. She laughed, a light, happy sound I hadn't realized I missed. "It sounds like you're finally finding yourself again." I looked over at the painting and smiled. "I am," I said. And it's exactly what I needed. That evening, I invited Cal over. I made fresh pasta, tomatoes, garlic, basil, simple food that filled the space with scent and sound and joy. No tension, no apologies, just friendship. As we ate, the painting looked on quietly. Cal raised his glass. To self-respect. We clinked glasses, and I felt something settle in me, like the echoes of all I'd been through had finally found their rhythm. Later, after he left, I sat alone beneath the soft light of the room. I studied the edges of the painting one more time. What Vivian gave me was never just a gift. It was a monument to the revolution I'd waged in silence. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady, just mine. The courage to walk away, the strength to define my own worth, the grace to hang that truth on my wall and live by it. As I turned off the lights and watched the room melt into shadow, I held that knowledge close. The dock wasn't just painted. It was inside me now, and I was ready for any sunrise. 6 months had passed since I left the condo and the life that crumbled inside it. In that time, I found something unexpected, a modest fixer-upper at the edge of town. Faded paint, sagging floors. But out back, a view of the woods that looked like possibility. Every weekend became a ritual, ripping down wallpaper, painting new walls, replanting what had once been neglected. Everything I touched bore the mark of my hand. My decisions. My time. From the newly stained deck to the hallway's vintage light fixture, every piece of it whispered, "This is yours now." On one crisp morning, coffee in hand, I stepped outside. The trees shimmered gold in the low sun. The mug steamed against the autumn air. I slipped the silver sapphire ring onto my finger. Vivian's gift. Cool against my skin, steady against my chest. It didn't shout. It reminded that dignity isn't something granted. It's claimed. I rubbed a thumb across the dark stone and thought about everything that had brought me here. The night I walked away from laughter that wasn't mine. The letters. The lies. The healing. I pulled my coat tighter and imagined, maybe someday, someone else living here. And wondered, would they feel what I left behind? The conviction in the floors. The determination in the walls. But that was far off. For now, it was mine. I stepped back inside, boots creaking across the plank floor. I walked toward the living room window, and there above the mantel, I placed the painting of the dock at sunset. A testament to quiet strength. Beneath it, a small flask of bourbon. A few well-read books, some business, some personal. And next to them, a little fern I'd named Hope. The room felt lived in. Rooted. Ready. That afternoon, I ran errands downtown, oak planks for the stair rail, weatherproof stain, a muted green for the front door. At each stop, shopkeepers greeted me by name. Asked how the house was coming. It felt good, simple, steady. The opposite of Castellan, where I'd once been laughed at in a suit that fit too well. As I loaded the last box into the truck, my phone buzzed. "Veronica, housewarming next month?" I smiled. "Count me in," I replied. A second buzz. "Cal, bring that bourbon." I laughed out loud. For the first time in a while, everything clicked. Back at the house, I carried the boxes inside. Paused at the bedroom door. Fresh hardwood floors gleamed in the low light. I'd laid them myself last week. Pale charcoal walls. A ceiling fan spinning gently. I stepped to the center and turned slowly, imagining what would go where. A bed for one. A desk for proposals and maybe, just maybe, new stories. And in the corner, a small record player. My music. My space. The scent of pine and paint wrapped around me like ownership. Later that night, I sat at the dining table. The one I'd refinished by hand. Blueprints were spread in front of me. Notes for built-in shelves. A new layout. The tables with grain caught the light. The ring on my finger glinted with it. With each line I sketched, I saw my own reflection in the plan. Not rebuilding. Building. For the first time, I wasn't surviving. I was designing something new. Rooted in dignity. Fueled by clarity. That night, when the house finally quieted, I poured myself a glass of bourbon. I sat in the living room, the painting glowing softly nearby. The glass warmed my palm. I took a slow sip and let it rest in me. Across the table, I noticed an envelope. East LA's handwriting. Untouched. I didn't move toward it. I didn't need to. That letter wasn't a message. It was a memory trying to sneak back in. But I'd already rewritten that story. And I didn't need to turn the page. I stood up and walked over to the coffee table, where the envelope still sat untouched. Without reading it, I picked it up and carried it to the recycling bin near the fireplace. That's where it belonged, among the scraps of a version of me I'd long since outgrown. On the mantel, beside Vivian's painting, I had recently placed something new, an antique compass I'd found at a roadside flea market. Its brass casing was scratched, the glass face clouded in spots, but the needle still trembled with quiet purpose, always pointing north. At first, I thought it was just a symbol of direction, something aesthetic. But standing there now, I saw it for what it truly was, a reminder to remain aligned with myself. I held it up to the painting and aligned the needle with the dock's distant perspective, as if both pointed toward the same steady horizon. Not where I had been pushed to go, but where I had chosen to stand. That night, sleep came easily in the master bedroom I'd rebuilt with my own hands. No racing thoughts. No looping memories. Just calm. I dreamed of new journeys. Of landscapes I hadn't yet seen. Of mornings that didn't begin with dread. Of becoming. And somewhere in the blur of sleep, I remembered how lost I used to feel. How small I became under someone else's gaze. How tangled I'd been in their definitions of worth. Now, I felt grounded. Clear. The sapphire on my finger catching soft light. The compass never swaying from its truth. When morning came, sunlight poured through the curtains I'd hung myself. Dust floated in golden beams. I stretched, then reached for the crystal tumbler on the nightstand, rolling it in my hand to wake my senses. A memory flickered, something Veronica once said over coffee. Don't confuse comfort with complacency. Growth is knowing who you are, and still choosing to evolve. I let that sink in. I slipped the compass into the inside pocket of my jacket and rolled the ring onto my finger. It settled there with familiar weight, like a quiet promise kept. Downstairs, the kitchen was filled with soft morning light. Hope, the fern, was thriving in the windowsill, her leaves stretching toward the sun. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee and let the rich scent settle into the air. I thought of the housewarming party next month, of laughter bouncing off the new walls, of friends sharing stories over food I'd make in a kitchen I'd reclaimed. Each voice, each smile, would be part of a life I'd chosen, built, not inherited. I thought of Vivian's strength, quiet but fierce, of Veronica's unshakable support, and of myself, the man who'd emerged from all of it, not defined by title or wealth or proximity to power, but by something far stronger, a heart that refused to be traded for approval. I raised the coffee mug to my lips and whispered into the stillness, "Here's to self-worth. Not borrowed, not negotiated, claimed." And in that quiet moment, surrounded by morning light and the walls I'd painted with intention, I realized something simple, profound, and lasting. I had found someone who saw my value without needing proof. Me.